This is Dog Talk with Michael J. Solar on BLK9 TV. Michael, dog trainer, author, and the owner of Blue Line Canine Dog Training, will bring you the answers you need, making your life with your dog the best it could be. Now, here he is, Michael J. Solar with Dog Talk on BLK9 TV.
Hey guys, Michael J. Solar here, and welcome to another episode of Dog Talk. Really excited. Today, I'm going to be interviewed by Matt Helpern. He is a potential client of Blue Line Canine, and he wanted to come in and ask questions that you yourself might be contemplating when looking for a dog trainer and or looking to work possibly with us. So I think this is a great experience to come in, and as I always like to say, is thank you guys for liking, loving, and subscribing. And today, thank you for watching this episode, because I think today's episode is essentially going to be an awesome one because of the fact that this is completely raw, completely unscripted. Matt came in here, signed his dog up for training. He sat me down, asked a few questions, and we discussed it. And we said, you know what? Let's do this for everybody. So we stopped the questioning right then and there and decided to set this whole thing up and give him the ability to interview me and ask about dog training in general, as well as working with Blue Line Canine. So Matt, I'm going to literally just hand it over to you and let you take it over. Sound good?
Fair enough.
All
Yeah.
right.
Well, thank you for being so open to this. Yeah, I mean, look, when I sat down with you, it was totally impromptu. I just wanted to introduce myself because I wanted to get to know who owns the place. But we kicked it off with a good conversation. And I do genuinely have questions because my dog is super important to me and my family, and his behavior going forward. He's young. I want it to work. I want it to work within our dynamic and our family. And I think at this point, with how busy I am, how busy my wife is, with having a newborn, with having other animals and all sorts of stuff going on, we need some help. So I'll give you some background specifically about the dog.
So I have to say, everybody that's watching and listening, this is a completely raw conversation. What we did to keep this 100% real for you is I did not look at anything prior. So the only thing I know about Matt is that he has a Borbal. That is about it. Other than that, we stopped everything. There's no preemptive. So this is 100% unscripted, raw material. So anything he says or asks me, I'm going to have to answer right away.
Perfect.
All right. So there you go.
So it's funny. So I'll be sharing this with my audience too. My audience has watched my two dogs grow up. Right, so they know Henry the Borbal and George the GBGB, which are two very different dogs.
They're very different, yeah.
But what people don't know about Henry is that he has definitely developed some I don't want to say problems, but some difficult behaviors during the course of the pandemic.
Okay.
So we got Henry in July of 2019. Okay. So kind of right before things started. When we got him, he was 8 weeks. We started socializing him instantly, and we were amazed because he was just so even keeled and calm and such just an easy dog. And I'm familiar with the breed. My father has a Borbal who we rescued. I've previously had Cane Corsos, so I'm used to big dogs that most people might be afraid of just by looking at them. So I've been very aware of the importance of socialization and making sure that I have control. So things were going great. We had him out with us at breweries, at restaurants, anywhere we could go. I was taking him in the car. We were going to family, everywhere. And things were going great. Pandemic hits. Happened to be right around the time that we were building a new home, sold our house, and we had this gap during the pandemic where we had to move in with my wife's parents. So normally that's fine, but you got the pandemic and all that stress and you can't really go anywhere. And on top of that, they have a dog who, for whatever reason, did not get along with Henry the Borbal.
Okay.
So it started off, there was one encounter where I was out back with my mother-in-law. I think her dog was being protective of her. Henry got a little too close and they got into it. Now at this point, Henry was maybe 80, 90 pounds, wasn't full size yet.
Okay.
And it was a lot of barking and a lot of entanglement, but no real damage done. But it was enough to kind of lay that foundation.
So it was an audible fight almost, right?
Yes.
Almost like what you're hearing in the background here, right? Now you hear all the dogs barking, but there's no contact. Obviously, they're inside kennels. But so it's an audible fight. It's very common to come across that. A lot of teeth snarling, a lot of phlegm everywhere, but no commitment, no bites, no damage.
That's correct. And there never was the damage. It never ever got to that in any point. However, living with them for a couple months, there were multiple situations like this, and everybody was on edge. I wanted the dogs to be able to be outside together and be able to have them be able to work. But her mom was apprehensive about having them outside together, and there was just natural avoidance occurring. And I had to sort of respect the fact that, hey, this isn't my house. I can't make the rules. I can push here and there, but I have to sort of respect that. So
now, real quick, so both dogs now belong to you?
No. This is her parents' dog, who happens to be a very large GBGV.
Okay.
But we have another separate GBGV.
Oh, okay. So there's 3 dogs technically in the mix here.
3 dogs. Yep.
3 dogs. Okay. So I was tracking. I'm like, wait a second.
3 dogs in the mix.
3 dogs in the mix. Okay.
Yep. And what's interesting is our other dog, whose name is George. I tend to worry, or I tended to worry that maybe he was a factor in this because of jealousy. Whether like before Henry was in the picture, their dog and George would play all the time. Then Henry's in the picture. They're our dogs. They bonded, right? So now we're all living together, and there's this strange dynamic where George is in the mix, and sometimes when George would be in the mix, the other 2 would fight.
Okay.
So there was just all these different things, and on top of not being able to socialize, not really be able to go out, everybody's dealing with the stress of the pandemic. He started to develop behaviors that we just hadn't seen before, and frankly that I had never encountered with any of my previous dogs, because I had never been in a situation that required me to be home and unable to really take advantage of socialization. Now, fast forward.
We're gonna have to. I want to take a second here because you keep saying the word socialization. So there's a major misconception about what socialization actually is. Socialization is getting the dog used to our society and environments, but teaching them to actually ignore it all. Accepting is essentially them becoming buddies with other dogs or people and things like that. So when we think about socialization during the pandemic, a lot of people are saying that they weren't able to socialize. The truth be told is you could have socialized your dog more during the pandemic than ever before. It's just that we were scared. We were nervous. Could we go to the parks? Could we go out? Could we do these things? But the truth be told is one of the best things, and we teach this in our puppy program, so our Dog Owner University and everything of the sort, is we literally tell people the best place to train your dog is in your front yard, because that's where the fire trucks, the police cars, the garbage trucks, the people, the bicycles, the real life environments are going to happen. So literally you can go outside in your front yard, and this is no joke. The best socialization you can ever do with your dog is sitting on your front yard with your favorite beverage and just hanging out with your dog. Because if you sit there in a lawn chair and just hang out with your dog, and then every time your dog gets essentially distracted, you call them back and do something with them by name drill or something that you'll learn with us, or we'll discuss at different points. Your dog will learn that you're the higher focus, and to essentially block out all those other distractions. So it's a really good thing there. Now, accepting is what you're actually referring to, I believe, in this scenario, is getting the dogs to essentially be one, right?
Yes, and both.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we just want to show that there is 2 different things. That's all.
No, that makes sense. It totally makes sense. Yeah, and now as we fast forward, he's not 90 pounds anymore. He's 150 pounds. And he's very, the breed is very aware, very smart, they're very protective naturally. And the behaviors that I see now have to do with both things that you just described.
Okay.
So to give you an example, we're out on a walk. He is on high alert. Now, I have him next to me.
Yeah.
He's not a leash puller. He's not walking in front of me. We have at least that part of it down.
Right.
But the minute that there's another person walking towards us, his ears are up and he's looking, and he will stare you down as you walk by. Right? We'll be walking, but he'll just eyes on.
Yeah.
Yep. Stays on, and to the point where a guy yesterday was mowing his lawn, stopped and said, "Wow, he's like staring me down."
Yeah.
If there are other dogs out, it's hit or miss. He'll either do the same thing, and I can usually kind of, get him to keep moving and not do much.
But tension, and he's able to move. Yeah.
But progressively, specifically over the past few weeks, it's gotten a little bit more aggressive to where he will hairs up. He's tries to run at him, or he will sort of like pounce on the ground and pull, and I have to really, it's 150 pounds of dog.
You're going to have to use some strength to hold the pack. Yeah, I get you.
Right, and if I were to let him go, I don't know what would happen. I've never seen him attack a dog or a person, but his behavior, his size, I can't risk it.
Right.
So these are some of the things that
escalating up, and these are major concerns to move forward onto.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just a couple quick other examples. Went out for a business meeting recently, had some coffee with a couple buddies, and we're sitting outside. I brought Henry with me to do what you're saying, which is just get him aware of surroundings and sounds and different people. As my buddy Josh, looked at him, Henry growls at him.
Okay.
Right? Just initially, just setting his boundaries, like, I don't know you, don't touch me, get away. We have issues like that with people coming to the house, and it's hit or miss. The people that he knows, he's like a baby. He loves. He's a child, a puppy. Yeah,
it's very common for them in a sense. Bigger dogs tend to be very collective. They Danes, essentially mastiffs, they like their group of people. They get connected to them, and then outsiders, they're very hesitant. It's actually very common with essentially any type of mastiff breed.
Yep.
You'll hear it from Great Dane owners. You'll hear it from mastiff owners across the board. It's a very similar scenario, right?
Sure.
So, all right, let's go into some of the things that we want to look at, right?
Yep.
So a couple of things that we always go into is when your dog is young, one of the main drills I always tell everybody is that you need to teach your dog the name drill, right? So in last week's episode, we literally talked about, it was last week, maybe a week before, I'm not really sure, but we talked about marker training and how we as humans actually learn markers at different ages in our life, right? So from 0 to 1, we're learning essentially positive markers. So we're learning what yes is, to happy, all these things. But what's funny about that is our parents are teaching our name to us, right? So a good way of understanding that would be is this one. Ready? So you told me earlier that you have a 7-week-old child. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, what is your child's name?
We can refer to him as Bear.
Bear.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means every time you probably go to him, right? And let's say he drops a poopy, right?
Yep.
You will literally turn to him and you'd be like, "Hi, Bear. Oh, you did poopies," right? It's this big positive thing, right?
Yeah.
And now suddenly now he's only 7 weeks. He doesn't understand English. He doesn't understand anything. But you're connecting a name to a highly positive emotion, right?
Right.
And meanwhile, what did your son do? He pooped.
Yeah.
He pooped, right? He might roll over. He might giggle. But everything you're doing is this huge positive association and the name Bear.
Yep.
So now Bear means to focus and get paid. Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
Okay. Now, give me 1 second here. I'm getting like some feedback on my... I don't know what that is. Maybe it's your phone.
Might be one of the phones, yeah.
Oh, well. Let's have to deal with it. All right.
All good.
Anyway. All right. So now, suddenly, Bear's going to turn 1. And from 1 to 2, what you're going to do is Bear's going to start essentially becoming mobile, right? He's going to start learning how to crawl and then walk. And then you're going to be like, "Come on, Bear. Come to Daddy. Yeah. And you're going to be using Bear as what?
A way to pull him toward
right? Yeah. You're going to be pulling him toward you, which means you're going to be teaching that Bear means to come.
Yeah. Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
Now what's going to happen is Bear's going to turn 2, and he's going to start getting into trouble. And it's known as the terrible twos, right? And we literally went over this the other day, but it's called the terrible twos. And the reason why is because that's when kids get mischievous, right? So what do parents do? They introduce the middle name. They get a little bit more firm with the name, right?
Yep.
So that means for the first 3 years of your life as a human, your parents are teaching you that your name means direction, correction, recall, and focus. 4 things.
Right.
Your name means direction, correction, recall, and focus.
Right.
Now, your dog growls, what do?
Say no.
But he doesn't know what no means.
Right.
See how that works?
Yeah.
All right. Bear starts to pull on the leash. What do? I mean, not Bear. I'm sorry.
Henry.
Yeah. We throw it off.
Sure.
Yeah. The human's Bear. The dog is Henry. Got it. Okay.
Well, sure.
If you're
saying no,
you pop the leash, right?
Sure.
So you're saying no. You're pulling the leash back, right? So now all of a sudden, what does Henry actually know is what he's supposed to do? Where did Henry's attention come from?
Yeah.
Henry's attention is coming from negative behavior. So in Henry's mind, who's a creature of attention and affection, right? So your dog is literally a creature of attention and affection. He thrives for anything that gives him attention, right?
Yep.
So if he growls, you say no. As far as he is concerned, you said yes. You said, "I want you to do that." If he pulls the leash and you pull back, as far as he's concerned, you want him to pull the leash. because every time
I'm
he's done
reacting
something
to him and showing some sort of movement, motion, attention. Yeah.
So if he growls at your friend, cut it out. He got attention, which means growling is a wanted behavior. Now, it's a crazy thing to think about when we're really looking at it. It's because you're like, well, Mike, I'm correcting the dog. Yes, you're using human corrections, which are taught to us in our life. Mm-hmm. As a young child, you're learning what correction words mean. When you so for example, don't touch that. That's hot. You still touch it. You burn your fingers, and then the next time you go to touch it, you lick your fingers before you touch it. You still touch it, right? Well, your dog's gonna do the same thing. So it's a crazy way of thinking about it. Is how do we fix these behaviors? Well, how we fix them is essentially, instead of correcting the dog, it's teaching the dog what we want them to do. So for our programs, we have a program called Dog Grown University. It's an online program. It's all education based. It's a phenomenal program to get you complete mindset enveloped into dog training. We call it the Puppy Jumpstart program, because it teaches you all the fundamental knowledge you need to know how to understand what your dog is thinking and how to make sure you're on the right track, right? Because there's three main things that go into training: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, clever Hans effect, right? But the other thing that nobody really likes to talk about is there's two major forms of training. Ready? Passive and interactive. Everybody focuses on interactive training. And you're looking at me on what is the difference, right? Interactive training is where I'm teaching the dog sit, down, come, heel, place, walk with me, stay with me, loose leash walking. We're interacting, right? It's almost, once time I say it, it clicks. Like, yeah, it makes sense, right? Yep. Passive training, you ready for this one? Is when your dog is literally studying you 24 hours a day. So how you react all day long is what your dog is learning, because they're learning how to calculate you and how to get attention from you or how to get something from you by doing a certain behavior. So for example, my dog is laying down doing nothing, and that's my wanted behavior. So what do? I creep through the room and ignore my dog. No, that's when you want to magically throw a treat at the dog. So their mind says, hey, every time I'm laying in the living room doing nothing, treats magically appear to me. Right. Then the dog's going to be like, I guess it's time to lay down in the middle of the living room, because your dog's going to believe that's what's going to get them the attention, the reward, right? Yep. If you walk in a room and say, good dog, when he's doing those kinds of things, your dog's going to want to repeat those behaviors. But when do we typically give the dog attention? When they're doing something bad. So they want to do what? Escalate bad. Sure, that makes sense. Right? Yeah. So now when we think about what you were just saying, like, hey, this is sort of what's going on. It started out small, and now he's starting to escalate up. Well, sure, because each time he escalated up, your reaction got more bigger. Intense. Yeah. So that means he's getting more reward. Right. But crazy, what's interesting, right? So for me, as a human, I think about, well, if I have a collar around my neck and someone's popping it and it doesn't feel good, sure, why do that, right? But I guess... Well, I'll give you a prime example of that. So I use this all the time. I tell people this is when it's crazy. You ready? All right, so if you're a creature of attention and affection and you don't speak my language, do you know you're being corrected? No. Now you said, what about the neck thing, right? Well, so he's like, it's a prong collar, right? Okay. So I know they don't hurt per se, especially a dog like him, but is there no sort of negative feeling that would be triggered to say in his mind, oh wait, this isn't desirable. My dad's looking at me like I'm an asshole. Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, then what I would look at it would be is this one. Ready? So here's the thing: is that tools are tools. Sure. Okay. So the prong collar. One, I haven't seen it on your dog, so I can't say if it's fitted properly. I can't say if you're using it properly. I can't say any of those things. But there is fitting issues, right? So number one is it has to fit the dog a certain way. It has to be fitted to the dog, meaning that just because it fits the dog, meaning like it's big prongs, big dog, doesn't mean it's actually having an effect. Because some prong collars, when you fit the dog properly, they don't have enough actual, essentially what they call teeth or probes, whatever you want to call them, right, in it to actually have an effect. So then what happens is you think you're doing something and really you're doing absolutely nothing. Right. So your dog's anatomy is uniquely similar but different than ours. So for example, our center of gravity is our waist. Their center of gravity is where their neck meets their shoulders. So that's why everyone's like, oh, you're choking your dog. You can't choke your dog at the center of gravity. Sure. But people will say that because they're working your emotion, right? Right. So they try to make you do things out of an emotional point set. Same thing with a prong collar. A prong collar should never be jerked. It shouldn't be that way, because how it's supposed to utilize, it's supposed to be pinching, right, the excess skin of the dog's neck.
Right.
So it should be, in a middle area, and it should be snug enough to where when the little bit of tension that you're giving is pinching the excess skin, causing more of an annoyance than a high pain or authority.
Sure.
But once again, your dog's going to learn that the only time I get attention is for this behavior. Negative attention is still attention. We didn't say the dog is desiring positive only. We said the dog is a creature of attention.
Right.
So negative attention or positive attention is still attention. When you have children that are running around being fools, mom and dad will say, they're just doing it for attention. Just ignore them. What do you think your dog's doing? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So when kids are having temper tantrums on the floor, kicking and screaming, and mom's smacking them in their butt or whatever it is, that it doesn't really deter the child completely forever.
Sure.
It's still attention.
Right. Still attention,
so
yeah.
It's a weird way of thinking about it, because once we think about ourselves as creatures of attention, we have to see that as a positive or negative is attention is attention. The key here is doing the yin-yang thing, right? So every positive has to have a negative, creating a neutral. We love to live in neutrality. That's the truth, right? So when you think about the pendulum, right? Anything that goes left must go right. Anything that goes right must go left. So the most operative point of harmony is where?
In the middle.
In the middle,
Yep.
right? So you want to stay as much as neutral as positive, right?
Sure.
As possible, not positive, as possible.
Right.
So when you think about your training and what you're doing with your dog, right? So for example, I want to give the dog more attention when they're not paying attention to the distractions, so that my actual punishment is the lack of attention when they get distracted. Right? So
Yep.
when I take a puppy home, right, with my puppy jumpstart program, everything that I'm doing, right? So everything I designed with Blue Line Canine with the assistance of my team, we designed it so you could be lazy and train your dog. That's the key.
Right.
Because humans are the laziest creatures on the planet. We will literally think of millions of ways to do nothing.
Sure.
Right? We created remote controls because getting up and changing the channel was difficult.
Right.
We create the iPhone, or better yet, the iPod, because changing the
Amazon.
disc. Amazon.
There you go.
Every product that we come up
Sure.
with, we come up with the laziest thing in the world, right?
Right.
Why?
Because we're lazy.
So that means everything that we adjust should adjust to fit lazy, right?
Sure. Yep.
So literally our programs are designed so you can still be lazy and train your dog, right? So easiest way to help you get where you need to get with your dog would be simply this. Sit on your couch, watch television, hang out with your 7-week-old, right? Right? Maybe watch television or a movie with your wife. And when your dog's not paying attention, say their name. Once the dog looks at you, right? So it'd be, Henry. What? Yes, good boy. Drop a treat next to you on the couch, off the couch. He'll come over. He gets the treat. You pet him when he gets there. You just taught your dog that Henry means to recall to you. Not look at you, recall to you, and stop what you're doing. So now Henry has a 4-point command. Direction, correction, recall, and focus. Just like your name does. Just like my name does. Isn't it crazy, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but Mike, I don't want my dog jumping on people. I don't want him growling at people. I don't want him doing those things. Right. Henry. What? Yes, good boy. Now all of a sudden he had a choice. He can get positive attention or he gets no attention. I created neutral.
Right.
Make sense?
Yep.
And I didn't have to make myself seem like my dog is disobeying me. I didn't have to degrade my dog. I didn't have to correct my dog, because even though I'm correcting him in a sense by saying his name, I'm giving him the ability to stay where? In a positive, right?
Right.
When I was in law enforcement, right? So I retired from law enforcement. I gave up the career path and I decided to go this way wholeheartedly. Very smart move on my behalf, in my belief. But here's the craziest thing about law enforcement that I always point out to people. Police officers are never really the loved ones. They've never been. Right? It's just what it comes down to is because we only represent the correction. You're speeding, we pull you over, we give you a ticket. You rob a bank, we put you in jail, right? So we represent essentially the prong collar, the e-collars, the slip collars in the dog world. We represent that. So everybody's on 995 and they're driving at maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour of the speed limit. They see the trooper in the highway and what do?
They get nervous and they slow down.
They nervous and slow down.
Right.
Then right when the trooper's car gets in the rearview mirror and they don't see it anymore, what do?
Speed up.
Which means they self-rewarded in passive training. So what they learned was not to speed, but to avoid the trooper.
Right.
Make sense now?
Mm-hmm.
So with your dog's not learning what not to do. Your dog's learning how to avoid you. You know, if Dad wasn't here, I could have totally went after that guy. If Dad didn't have this prong collar on, I totally would have more control. See how that sort of works?
Yeah.
So that means every tool you use. Now, this is the example I say, and I've said this, and I literally wrote a letter to the governor when I was a police officer saying that officers during Click It and Ticket Month, right? You know what that is?
Yeah.
The seatbelt thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I said that we should be giving tax rebates to people wearing their seatbelts instead of tickets to people not wearing their seatbelts. We have to make it a want, not a fear.
Right.
So if I was at a stop sign and you pull your car up and you were wearing your seatbelt, I'd be like, here you go, Matt. Here's $80 off your income taxes for the state of Maryland.
Right.
Thanks for abiding by the law.
Right.
You'd be like, hey, officer. Woohoo. Right.
Look,
You'd be like, you would be my friend.
Right. Yeah.
And that means you would be looking for me instead of trying to avoid me.
Right.
And if you're not avoiding me because we're friends, that means your behavior is changing to what pleases me, which means unwanted behavior has now disappeared by your choice, not by my hand.
Right. Got it.
Now, when you think of dog training, it is the same. If we teach our dogs everything we want them to do by passively training them, by giving them the rewards when they're doing the things we want, then what happens? We get to be lazy and they get to be obedient. Isn't it crazy?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just blew your mind, didn't I?
Yeah.
I see it in your face.
Well, I like the analogy too with how it works with a police officer and the rebate and the click or a ticket.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense when you think of it in that scenario. So with that being said, unfortunately, I'm not working with a puppy.
No. So that's where you get into bigger, bigger things, right?
Right.
So we develop bigger programs. So we have the Dog Owner University Jumpstart. Now, I will tell you, all kidding aside, I believe that program is good for anybody that's seeking knowledge. Even if you don't have a puppy, it's a good program to seek knowledge. The reason why we call it Jumpstart is because you're jumpstarting your knowledge, not jumpstarting the dog to sit down and come, right?
Sure.
We're looking at it in a sense of once you get your mindset in the right direction, it changes the way you do things in general. So that's why we call it the Puppy Jumpstart program, right? Now when we think about the adult dog, right, we're thinking about the older one. And you have the prong collar currently. We can go into e-collars or we can go into slip collars. We can go into many different things. But the truth be told is all dogs, just like people, still work for attention. So irrelevant to the tools that we get into, it's still going to be about the attention given, right? So teaching the dog those passive points, right, is those keys, right? Now, all dogs are predatory creatures. Now, this one really people tend to forget because they'll say, no, Mike, they're domesticated. They're our buddies. They're our pals. They're our friends. And the answer to that is yes and no. They're still dogs. Dogs don't go to the bathroom in the house. They do, but on the floor. They don't go into the actual bathroom, into the porcelain gods. That's just us, right?
Oh yeah. My RGBGV, my wife's sweetest thing in the world. Yeah. Loves to kill anything he can find in the backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. They're still dogs at the end of the day. They're still predatory creatures looking to hunt. If for example, if I put a baby or a child outside and told them to survive, they're going to die. Yeah. Where if I put my dog outside, they will figure out and survive. Yeah. Out in the wild. You see what I mean? That means they're not fully domesticated. Yes, we have bred them, we have changed them, we have brought them into our homes. Yes, we've done these things to make them on our side, to make them friendlier and take away from natural instincts. But they're still dogs. They're not cooking, they're not cleaning, they're not going to work in that aspect. So now all of a sudden we have to think about that. So now we have to think, why and how can I use it to my advantage? Okay, my dog lunges at somebody. I'm not going to change directions. I'm going to immediately walk backwards. Now, predatory creatures like to take ground. That means me walking backwards does what?
Takes the ground away.
So I just punished my dog again. But I didn't do what?
Ignore it.
I didn't.
Right.
I literally put the dog in his place, right?
Yep.
By walking backwards. Yep. So I just punished the dog with a psychological system instead of a hit, instead of a physical force point of something to avoid, right? Right. Because remember, we go back to that state trooper. I don't want a ticket, right? Mm-hmm. But if that trooper doesn't come after to get me, what happens? I learned what?
Just to avoid.
No, I got away with it, which means I rewarded myself because I'm still speeding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So this is the weird part about it is when we think about corrective, 100% correction-based, it doesn't work. And the reason why correction-based doesn't work is because when we learn what the correction is, we learn how to avoid it. We slow down when the trooper's there. We speed up when it's not. Yep. Hence why now they came out with new things called red light cameras or speed cameras or these cameras. And then half the time you're driving, if you see the sign for it, you just start cussing because you don't know where it is. Right. So you just, right? Yeah. But once again, they could change all of our habits if they were truly into it by giving us tax rebates for doing the speed limit. It should be speed reward cameras, not speed. Right. It's like, right? Yeah. It should be the opposite way. Right. Yeah. It should be the other way around. So the same thing with your dog. If I walk backwards from the threat, the dog loses ground, which means he's sacrificing it to the threat. And then the dog will literally start to calm down naturally and learn by that pace walk of going back and forth how to get closer to what they're trying to evade and or avoid or be aggressive towards, which means they'll naturally calm down. One of the analogies I typically use when dogs start to escalate up is boiling water. So if a dog is starting to get their anxiety up, which is like, barking and lunging towards things, a lot of times we don't realize this, but if you ever took a pot of water and that's like half full and put it on the burner and you just let it boil, that half full pot of water will start boiling over the sides, right? Yep. And then you can immediately take it off the burner and then put it right back on, and that water will not boil over the sides. Well, if your dog is lunging towards somebody and you back off, same thing as taking the pot off the burner, and you go back, the water's still at the same temperature again, and it has to boil back up again, which means going back and forth, you can actually cool the water. Same as lowering the anxiety. Right. So the dog is starting to lunge up because the anxiety is building up because it wasn't addressed prior to the anxiety buildup. So if I'm walking, instead of focusing on my dog or being completely distracted, I know what's going to trigger my dog. Lawnmowers, this, that, or whatever. I'm looking for those things. And once I start to see them in my vision, right, I'm going to start working my dog in that drill. Walking backwards, to and fro, to and fro, to and fro. Next thing you know, my dog is starting to pay attention. Now, once again, are there some times where, Mike, I just don't have the time for all this? Yeah, then we get into tools. And that's when we have to sit down and break down what the tools are, how we're going to use them, and what are beneficials to using them. Sure. We don't want to just ever use a tool just for a walk. You have to look at what the tool is and why it has to be introduced completely. So you could be getting e-collars, you can get into treats, you can get into slip collars, you can get into prong collars you can have, but it has to be a balance point. Does that make sense? It has to be where it's a part of it. And the reason why is this. It's called the Clever Hans effect. Remember we talked about that earlier, how your dog is studying things all the time. Yep. So if your dog only wears the prong collar to go for a walk, that means I get to be, a layman's terms, a dick all the other times. Yep. Oh, Mike, I let him wear it all the time, but I take the leash off. Well, obviously the leash is a difference. And so you have to, what they call desensitize. It's getting used to. Sure. So when I was in the United States Marine Corps, it's a great example of this. The drill instructors were with me 24 hours a day. By the end of boot camp, I missed them. And any Marine will probably tell you the same. They miss the Marine Corps boot camp because when they come out, they think everybody's disgusting and nasty, right? Because by the time you graduate, you fell in love with how it is. Sure. Now, here's the other crazy analogy. Since you like the police one, I'll give you another one. It takes 30 days to create a habit, 60 days to enforce a habit, 90 days to create muscle memory, which means you must be consistent for a long period of time. Yep. Most people quit within the 14 to 45 day mark. Go to the gym in the beginning of the year. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to lose weight. By mid-February, your brain has convinced you that going to the gym is torture because you went way too hard for the first 30 days, right? Now, there's 5 branches of service, right? You have U.S. Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, Army, United States Marine Corps, okay? Yes, some people are going to argue there's 4, but we're going to go with the 5, all right? We're going to go with the 5. The Marine Corps are the only ones that have a 90-day boot camp. You're there the longest. Any Marine you meet is a Marine for life. Isn't that weird?
Makes sense.
Everybody else was in the service.
Interesting. Yep.
How many friends do you have that were in the Marines? How many friends have you met or people you met that were in every other branch? And they'll tell you, oh, I was in the military. But not a Marine. A Marine will tell you what?
I'm a Marine.
I'm a Marine.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a couple of friends right now. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And if you say, oh, you're in the military? Marine Corps.
Yeah.
But if somebody was in the Army, Navy, Air Force, or Coast Guard, were you in the military? Yes.
Right.
Why?
I'm assuming it's the 90 days.
90 days. It's for life. Yeah. You've embedded it. Sure. We learn the history. We learn the lifestyle. We learn what it is. And now suddenly it's there for life. One of the greatest things I can honestly tell you about dog training that really, I believe, helped me develop a lot of things was sitting down and looking back to my Marine Corps career and seeing what they did. Not one time did a drill instructor actually correct me. They tell me how to fix myself constantly. Get online now. Lights, lights, lights. Do this, do that. Put your boots on. Get dressed. Do that. They would tell you what to do to succeed, never tell you what you do to fail. Put your boots on now. Tie your boots now.
Right.
Right? Get on your face now. Yeah. Push up. 1, 2, 3. Like they're telling you instructional, what I need to do to what? Succeed.
Right.
When you look at dog training, and I want you to go, and I'm sure you've done this. In conversations, you've even said that you've checked out other trainers. How often do you hear the trainers telling you that they only want to gear the dog for what to do to become successful compared to correcting behaviors?
There's a lot of stuff out there about how to correct.
How to correct.
Right.
That's
Sure.
a horrible human thing that we do.
Sure.
Matter of fact, when I teach businesses, the first thing I tell businesses is stop correcting your employees. You have to lead them by example to the promised land, to show them how to do it by showing them what you do to become successful. Time management, money management, success, visionary things. You have to do those things. And here's the crazy thing is that at the age of 5, we enter into kindergarten, right? Where we stop asking questions and are told the question and the answer to memorize for a test. And for the rest of our lives, we live by that process. But for the first 5 years of our life, as children, right? Our children, and you're going to experience this really, really soon. This is your first kid, right? 7 years?
Yep.
7 weeks. So he's going to start asking you, why, Dad? How come this happens? Why? 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 And they start asking you, you're seeking information, and they're watching you and your significant other, and they're doing this kind of stuff because they're seeking information to become successful. They're going to guide their life off of what you show them in this time frame. And then when we enter into school, we start molding them into a system. That's why we believe that we're only supposed to work Monday through Friday, not weekends and holidays, because what is the school year?
That's what the school does, right? Sure.
That's what the school does for 18 years of our life. So now suddenly summer comes, we're like, oh, I can't work in the summer. I hate working in the summer. Because why? You were taught that you're supposed to have summer off.
No days off. No days off. Not for me. Yeah, no days off.
So you see how he's like, summer hit. Oh, no, I got to, it's beautiful weather. I'm supposed to be outside. Oh, it's this. We're supposed to have recess. We need breaks. We need this. Because that's what we're taught.
Yep.
But if you allowed your brain and you allow yourself to do passive training and learning and seeking the information, imagine how much you'll be opened up. Right?
Sure.
Like right now that we're talking about this, how much are you literally going, wow, it's such a massive thing. Don't worry about correcting, worry about guidance. I don't have to teach you not to rob a bank if I teach you how to work for money.
Right. Right.
It's crazy to think about it, right?
Sure.
So it's an amazing thought process is if I teach you how to succeed, I don't have to correct you in failure.
Right.
So that means if your dog is shown, no matter what age, and that's the key, it doesn't matter the age. Once you show them how to get what they want, the rinse and repeat is very simple. Now, another thing that was brought up prior to the cameras, or the camera being one camera, that's why it's a crappy angle, sorry everybody, going on was introduction to other dogs. You were talking about how Henry would fight the other dog, right?
I'm concerned that he would. Yeah,
okay.
Right.
Because of the slobber fight, right?
Oh, correct. Yeah, in our family.
Yeah.
Sure, yes.
So here's the thing. When introducing animals to animals, I have a mathematical equation. I call it's up by 2s, down by 3rds. That is important because when you think about it, if I'm going to give you 30 seconds to be around somebody, is that enough time to judge somebody?
No.
Is it enough time to have a problem with somebody?
Yeah.
30 seconds is like that. It's pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay.
So now, suddenly, if I bring 2 dogs into a room,
okay,
and I crisscross them, it's probably going to take me 30 seconds just to walk past them.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. I see what you mean.
Because I'm trying to introduce family dogs, right?
Sure.
So your family, you're trying to introduce them to dogs. So we just go past, and then I wait a half hour, and I do it again. Now I do it a minute. Then I do 2 minutes, and then I'll do 4 minutes, and then I'll do 8 minutes. See, I'm going up by 2s, right?
Up by 2s, right. And then down by 30
down
is
by
like
30.
a 30-minute break.
So what happens is,
right.
no, the break is 30 minutes.
That's what,
30 minutes to an
right.
hour. But here's the down by 3rds is this. Excuse me. I get to 16 minutes. My dog has a growling a thing. They didn't get along. I'm going to subtract 1/3 of the time when I reintroduce them together. And the reason why I do that is because I was successful up to that point. What I don't want to do is go all the way back to 8 minutes.
Sure, okay.
So I'll subtract 4.
4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah,
right.
4 to 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden I'm going to subtract 1/3 of the 16, right? Now all of a sudden I put the dogs back together. Now they have success again. Then I'll double again. Because again, the dog is going to remember the last event. So if they keep having a good time with the dog, they never got to the fight, they learn how to get used to each other, right? The other thing is that if you manage to have all the dogs, right, he who controls the food controls the world. Rotate who eats first every time. How I do it, since I have a house of multiple dogs, is we would have the dogs always separated in their crates. We feed our dogs in our crates, and I highly recommend that, always feeding dogs in crates. One, it keeps people away from messing with their food. So you never have to worry about a dog being aggressive over food, and it lets the dog eat in peace, just like you want to eat in peace yourself, right? So they don't have to be stressed out thinking somebody's going to mess with it. They'll calm down, and they can digest their food. But what I would do is I would rotate who eats first every meal by flipping a coin. So that means I cannot predict who actually gets fed first, second, and third, because it's a game of chance every time, which means...
There's no bias.
That's right, and that means there's no hierarchy. So the dogs can't always establish that the crate from the left is more important than the crate on the right. So that means they won't fight over the crate either.
Sure.
So they are learning that they're all equality, right?
Yep.
Then when you have a baby, right, and you're feeding them in the crates, you carry your baby and you feed them that way. That means the child's odor and the child becomes a part of the feeding rituals, and they start looking at the child as a part of the hierarchy. So now you're comboing this whole effect all while you're just doing what? Passive training.
Right.
This is teaching the dog from their normal psychology end of this is how this works.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and it brings up one of the things that I want to make sure that I'm aware of, and my wife is aware of going forward. I mean, you hear horror stories all the time about babies and dogs deciding to maul a baby, right? I mean, it just happened recently.
Well, it's not something to smile about,
No, it's not something
to smile. I smile when you...
Sure.
And I was like, I'm not
No.
smiling. Yeah. I'm not smiling at the mauling of the baby, but it's
and I mean, it's happened to somebody that I know.
Yeah.
And, I can't imagine that the owners of those dogs ever would think, oh, my dog is going to do this. Their response is, oh, my dog's trained. It's not going to hurt my child who they've seen in my arms for however long.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is are there steps to establish that sort of hierarchy understanding like you're talking about that would deter, and how can you predict that? I mean,
you can't. So you can't predict any person or thing. You can't. So it's never mind the dog. I can't even predict a person from not wanting to hurt a child or something like that.
Right.
So it's irrelevant to a training point, but you can put everything in place. So I was telling you a story when you had mentioned that you had the 7-week-old off the camera, but I'll tell everybody the story. Is that I would act like a fool when my wife was pregnant. So one of the things that I would do is we would carry the groceries into the house with the car seat. So I'd literally we bought the car seat, we had the car seat already, and what we would do is we would load the car seat with stuff and bring it into the house. So my dog got desensitized prior to me having the baby.
Sure.
The dog got desensitized to me carrying the car seat. And I would use the car seat to put stuff back in the car, to and fro. So then we'd put it on the counters, put it on the floor. I'd pick it up. Anytime the dog got near it, I'd pick it up off the floor.
Sure.
So the dog got used to this. And then when we added the baby, the dog's like, it's just groceries.
Right.
That didn't click, right?
Sure.
Then with the baby being held, I would work my dogs. I would do commands. I would do things like that. I would have the treats in my hand where they're holding the baby. So then it would appear that the baby's dropping the treats, because I would drop them and dispense them out of the hand or arm that's holding the child. I would buy the front harness that I'd hook my kid to the front harness and do my drills and do the training and stuff like that. They became a part of the mealtime by me holding them while I was handing out the dog food. You're putting things in place that is showing the dog that the child is a part of the hierarchy.
Got it.
Right?
Yep.
And never allowing the dog to believe that they're a part of that hierarchy by implementing the family in rotation, making them all a part of this process. Again, psychology is always going to overwork and be the key to your success when you think about it, right? So the older the dog, it doesn't matter. You just have to put the implementation. The biggest thing that we talk about is, and I heard the best analogy for learning the difference between young versus old with Darren Hardy. So I have to give him credit for this quote. It has to do with a tree, and I'm not going to give it as a quote because I can't. But is this. When training a new dog, young versus old, is simply as this. If I asked you to go outside and rip a sapling out of the ground, you could do that with your bare hands. Bloop, it's out, right? But if I asked you to cut a tree down, you'd probably need some tools.
Yeah. You still cut it down.
Still cut it down.
Just need some different tools.
You just need some help to assist you in the process.
Right.
But the process is still one and the same, right?
Sure.
You just need some help. And that's the same thing with the adult dogs. You might need something to help you get over the habits that have been embedded for a long period of time. We're running short on time in this episode. We have 15 more minutes, so we won't be able to get into all the different tools and how they work unless you want to come back and visit again.
Sure.
But that's the kind of thing. So we have 15 minutes. I know you have more questions. So any other more pertinent questions right now?
Yeah. So I'll try to keep it to 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
So one other thing that I'm curious about that you should know about with my dog is, to me, seemingly, he has these very strange anxieties. I'll give you an example. He has no fear of the dryer, but the washing machine, he will hide and cower and try to get as far away from it and whimper as possible. I don't understand that, right?
Yeah, so that's the vibrations, the sound. So it could be the tumbler that's vibrating the floor.
He doesn't like when the water drains.
The like yep, so it's something that could be agitating his ears. There could be a lot of different things that could be coming into play like that. Now, there is a process to doing that that's, essentially like one of the big things that I would normally do is I put settings. So let's say the vacuum is the easiest one. So everybody typically suffers from the vacuum one, right?
Sure.
So I'd put the vacuum next to the food dish.
So what's interesting is the laundry machine is right next to where they eat.
Yeah.
So, but what I try to do is avoid running the washer while they eat, so he's not eating in an anxious state.
Yeah. So it's really the point of giving small increments, so he doesn't have to stay in there for a long period of time. But it's desensitizing. Right. So that's going again. It's desensitizing. That's actually socialization. It's getting the dog to ignore the unwanted from the wanted. So like I would have the washers going, but I would move the food far away from them. So the noise is still going on while they're eating, and then every day I would just move the bowl closer and closer and closer and closer. Same thing as fireworks, loud noises. Like when I was in law enforcement, we had to get the dogs used to gunfire. Yep. So we would have the dog far away from the gunfire, and then every day the gunfire would just get closer and closer as we're playing with the dog. The dog starts tuning that out because they're having too much fun. Next thing you know, they just don't care anymore. They're desensitized to it.
Yeah, we did that. A similar thing with he doesn't like. He's got this weird thing with book bags. Or specifically black items for whatever reason.
Okay.
So he has to go upstairs and downstairs every day. So we would put a book bag that he seemed to be fearful of or aggressive towards kind of near the steps.
Yeah.
And just have him go
up and down. Yep.
And eventually, yes, he completely ignores it and doesn't care. But when there's a new item like that, my wife got some cooler yesterday that was this big. He's growling at it. He's not sure what it is. So it's just, again, it's I'm curious as to where these things developed, right?
It's not developed. It's undeveloped. That's the thing. It's not something that grew over time. It's something that never got introduced. So again, the difference between us and animals is mainly comprehension. You know what a cooler is. So if a cooler might take a shape or change shapes, you know what a cooler is.
Sure.
For example, I know what a car is, but if you look at a car from the 1960s to a car today, I mean, heck, look at the Ford Broncos. Right. What did they do to that thing, right? They had a beautiful truck from years. Yeah. Stop making it, and then they come out with that thing.
Yeah.
It's like, but it says Bronco, so you're like, oh, it's a Bronco.
Right. Yeah.
Your dog says,
Right.
It's that difference, right? So I know another question, that's what it comes down to, is you just have to keep desensitized. I'm sorry, I was about to change the subject. So to finish that one, is essentially what you want to do is you just want to little by little keep increasing. The more they're around it, the more they don't care about. The more they're focused on you, the less they care about environment. Most dogs that don't care about environment are just so focused on their owners and that high drive that they don't care about everything else. And that is one of the key things. Now, the other thing that brought you in here is that you're looking to sign up for our Stay and Train program.
Yeah, and I do have a couple questions about that, but go ahead.
So that's what we're coming in. So I got 10 more minutes, and that's why I sort of want to wrap that into it. So you're coming into our Stay and Train program, and we were talking about the different things. And one of the big questions that you had actually before we signed on was, what are the true benefits of a Stay and Train versus one-on-one training? Well, the true benefit to Stay and Trains, if you get the right company, is that the company's going to jumpstart your dog. They're going to get your dog from where they need to be, getting that foundational training in, and then they're going to convert it to you, meaning that they're going to set you up for success by teaching you how to maintain it. So it allows you to be lazy, right? But the most important thing is you have to continue the work for the next 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
Now, you don't have to introduce it. It's already been introduced. So, for us, we give written homework assignments. We give you some breakdown videos. We give you exit lessons. You're going to get bombarded with information that you then have to just wean out. Now, we're also working to put the entire program online. So then that way, we're not there yet.
Sure.
I'll admit it. We have the jump start, but we don't have this program online. But the idea here is that you would be able to watch the videos and maintain during the next 90 days.
Right.
Because you're trying to make something stay for life. You're trying to create new muscle memory. So our job with the Stay and Train is to jumpstart your dog, getting the dog's behaviors introduced, the tools and equipment necessary to be introduced, and so that way the dog is used to what's going on. But you just have to follow through with what we teach you. So which means It's very easy. It's a very easy process for you.
Yep.
So what is the main difference between that and working one-on-one, right? The difference is your dog is going to get worked straight through for 6 to 8 hours a day, right? Because that's the trainer's schedules. They're going to come in. We're going to be able. So for us with Blue Line, we literally will take your dog to different locations. We bring your dog to White Marsh. We bring your dogs to parks. We bring your dogs to our other facilities. So we bus your dog. That's why we have a school bus that we bus your dog. We bring him different places, and that way we get to truly test your dog in real life environments. So It's not just sitting in our backyard doing sit down and come. We're literally driving your dog around, doing stuff that you would be prepping your dog for. That's why we sort of interviewed you when we first met to find out what you want with your dog, because we're going to customize those goals, right? Yep. If you lived in Baltimore City, we're going to have to make sure that your dog is around the city. If you live in the country area where there's no tall buildings, we're going to have to spend more time around cattle, wildlife, noises, things like that. So we get the dogs desensitized to that kind of stuff for you.
Sure.
So then when you get your exit lesson, that's where it comes down to.
Yep.
When you do one-on-one lessons, you're there for an hour. And I'll be honest, the first 15, 20 minutes is just getting acquainted and started. Then you train the dog for a couple of minutes, and then you have to set up your next lesson.
Right.
That's all within an hour.
Right.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they send you on your way. And I'll see you next week, or I'll see you every other week, or you're the one doing the majority of the work. So now all of a sudden, if your wife, your kids, your work, you didn't get any work done. So now the trainer shows back up for your exit for the next lesson, and you're repeating the first lesson because you didn't get the practice.
Right.
The Stay and Train programs eliminate that, because now your dog's where you need it to be. All you have to do is maintain the work.
Sure. So I wonder if there's people that obviously, like, we love our dogs. We treat them right. And we worry about things like, well, how's my dog going to react to being dropped off at a new place with a bunch of noise and they're sleeping on a different surface.
Floor,
they're not in a comfortable, quiet room with the fan blowing. My dog, he's black. It's summertime. It's hot out, right?
Yeah.
So these are all concerns that I have, or questions I have. It's like, how, I asked, it's funny, I asked Holly last time I was here about like the abandonment thing. Like, I don't want my dog to feel like I'm dropping him off at a kennel and being like, bye, you're no good anymore. See you later. Right. And, I know they don't think the way we think, but a human concern is like,
I would say there's a level of that actually happens. So let's see how we combat that as simply as this. When your dog comes in, we don't immediately take him out on the first day and start hammering obedience into him. What we'll do is we'll get to know them. We'll take them for walks. We'll take them on the obstacle course. We'll start having fun with them. We're actually at our facility here in Joppa, and you can turn around. You can see that there's little bathing pools. We're actually going to get more. There's shade trees. Our building is completely central air, AC and heated, so it's climate controlled. Yep. It's always 64 degrees in our kennels, so that way it combats any of the doors opening and closing, so it keeps the dogs where they need to be. The bus, the reason why we bought a bus is because of the AC unit on it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just because I wanted a bus. It was really because it has the AC that can keep the temperature in the back for the dogs to always stay where they need to be, because it is summer. It is going to be irrelevant to the color of your dog. It's hot and they got a winter coat on.
Sure.
We have to combat it, and that's what we did. We put all this stuff in place. We guide the dogs. We don't overwork the dogs. And the idea is to build a relationship and getting them used to us. And as we introduce the training, and that's why your dog's going to get a lot of work. It gets slowly introduced, and it's introduced the right way, which means it doesn't need to be hammered in.
And do you have, I would imagine you have success with this, but like with a dog, like a Mastiff, like you described, that is very attached and loyal to the family, I wonder if it's an extra added challenge for a dog like that who's going to come in and look at you and be like, who the hell are you?
Yeah, sure.
Why am I going to listen to you? Why?
And that's why you don't just push the dog into an obedience. You have to build a relationship. So again, it's one of those things where when we look at everything that has already been there, and the military is one of the great examples of obedience, right? Because the military's been doing it since the beginning, right? And they get people to literally volunteer and then go to combat and listen to somebody and drive $1 million trucks, $3 million planes, whatever it may be, off of a piece of paper or somebody telling them what to do, right? So it's the same thing with our dog, but if you think about it, is you have to find where the dog, what their drive is. Now, there's in the beginning, typically the dogs will have a shutdown for a day or two, and that's why what we do is we have you drop off on the weekend, so they actually just get to hang out. So we don't just start training. So that way they drop off on a Sunday or Saturday, which we preferred. That way your dog can come in, get used to the kennel, get used to the play times, get used to the environment. And then when we come in and we start building a rapport, the environmental challenge is already over with. Right?
Yeah.
And then we go from there. No worries. Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So then we start building that rapport with the dog and going from there. So we have that process in place. You'll experience it again at pickup. And that's why a lot of times what we'll do is that's why it's very important that we give you the written homeworks and we send you the videos, because the videos are to help explain what you need to do with your dog, is because your dog's going to be so excited that you're back that they're not going to want to behave perfectly. And that's for anybody. It's just the way it is. They just missed you for X amount of time, and that's just what it comes down to.
Right.
And that's where, we also have another program called the Platinum Program, which, again, it's a slower one. It's 1 day a week where you drop your dog off for the day. We train them. You get your exit lesson on 1, 3, and 6, and you work on it at home as a slower process. And that's more of a lifestyle scenario. It's what's going on in your life, what's better for you, things like that. The only thing to it is the results can vary based on the dog or based on those types of things. So if I had a really high drive sport dog, I might have way more obedience or way more showmanship to it versus a dog that's, on the more of the lazier side, things like that. We have a Boer Bull now in kennel, and for that dog, he's like, hey, if you don't have cheese, I don't care what you do. Like, it ain't working. Bust out some cheese, and he's ready to ride a bike.
Right.
So you adjust. So the trainer gets to know the dogs get to know the trainers, they adjust to it. Then we also rotate the trainers with the dogs, so they have to work with multiple people. And this is one of my favorite things, is because what I feel that we're really blessed with this company in particular is that we're able to rotate our trainers. Now, why I find that to be important is because your dog has to go home to you, mom, and whoever, which means that the training has to be transitional.
Right. Well, that was my other question. Is there, when I describe my dog and you get to know my dog, do you say, oh, it's got to be with this trainer, right?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It's got to be rotated. Now, if your dog becomes aggressive and starts biting everybody, then it's going to go to the trainers that are going to be more familiar with aggression or something like that. But then the idea is to get the trainers that are not familiar also involved, so they are learning. We use it as a learning time, right? So, for example, if a dog is going after somebody, that'll be me, it'll be a couple other trainers that we have here, but then all the other novice trainers are going to come and be a part of it. And the idea is to get that dog to those novice trainers before they go home.
Yep.
So the idea is to get the aggression under control enough to where they could be worked by the novice trainers. The main intent is always to constantly work a different person, a different trainer, at least a couple of times a day, so the training is transitional. It has to be transitional in order for it to be successful at home. If it only works with one person, then obviously they'll be like, yeah, the dog does everything for me, but it doesn't do anything for anybody else.
So he'll be with you guys for almost 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So in your mind, is that enough to create the foundation?
It's foundation, yes.
The analogy you used for me, as a drummer was, you're not going to give a new student a bunch of drums and hardware on the floor and say, build this, because they're not going to know what to do.
No.
I'll build it for them.
Correct.
And then I'll teach them how to play it. Right?
You got it.
Right. So is that 2 week period enough time when you talk about the complexities of what I perceive as the complexities of a dog and the scenario? And again, factoring in also the adjustment period.
I'll give you the best analogy going back into what you do the best, right? The drumming. Right now, if I asked you to teach me to drum, right? How quickly, if you had 2 weeks boot camp with me, dedication, how quickly do you think you can get me playing?
Pretty quick.
Because you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But now if you said, all right, I'm going to teach somebody else to teach me, how much longer is that going to take?
good bit of time.
See the difference?
Mm-hmm.
So we eliminated you out. We know what we're doing. We're going to get the dog doing what he needs to do. Now, all of a sudden, once you had me playing the drums, you can bring that other person in and be like, the first thing we did was we did a drum roll. We taught the 2 different hand techniques. We did this, right? It's irrelevant to that person, the actual hand techniques, how to grab it, how to be perfect at it, right? But you need to be perfect at it to teach the student.
Yep.
But not to maintain the student.
Right.
They just need to know what they were.
Sure.
I don't know if there's names for the 2 different techniques, but
traditional and match.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
But yeah.
So there you go. So there you have traditional and match. So once that third person, right, knows what they are, they don't need to be perfect at it.
Right.
They just need to know what they are so they can keep coaching me and working me, right?
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
Same thing.
Is there ever a trainer that you guys have worked with or have here who gets frustrated with a dog?
Yes.
And isn't able to train them, or I know how I can get sometimes with Henry, so
yeah. The first thing that happens, the number 1 rule is once you get frustrated, you put the dog away. You stop what you're doing, you put the dog away, and you start over again. Come seek us. That's why we're a team.
Right.
Again, going into why I love what Blue Line Canine has become over the years is because we're able to teach. We get volunteers that come in here and want to watch. And again, the number 1 rule is if you are getting frustrated, if you were getting mad, you're getting overheated. I mean, the dogs get overheated, so do we.
Sure. Put
the dog away. It's easier to come back at night when it's cooler, or come back later, than it is to push the dog through something that's not fair to the dog or you. Because again, if you're frustrated, the dog's not learning. So then what are you doing? Now you're forcing a behavior for absolutely no reason. So shut it down and end it. Right. So that's the big thing here, is that we care more about the results than we were caring about the numbers. For us, even when we were talking earlier, again, something that happened prior to the camera was, I even said, this is why we did this, by the way, is he was saying that he had major concerns. And I was like, well, you're not the only person that has these types of concerns. And you went and talked to other trainers. And one of the biggest things for us was like, after our interview, if you weren't comfortable, what did I say to you I would do?
Refund my money.
Refund the money.
Yeah,
Simple as that. I'm here for you and your dog. And I will always be here for you and your dog. I will be here to educate you. I will be here to hold your hand. I will be here to coach you down off the ledge of doing something silly. You can literally go back and contact any person that's ever worked with me or knows me. They can text me 24 hours a day and tell me something horrible happened, and I will be there to help them understand it, break it down, figure out what went wrong, and how we could prevent it from ever happening again. The most important thing when you're looking for your trainer is making sure you connect. Because if you don't connect, it doesn't matter how knowledgeable they are. They can be the greatest ones in the world. They can have every award in the world, right? Don't trust them if you don't get along with them, because you'll never learn from them.
Sure.
The other thing I always tell people is this. If the person has every award in the world, you might want to reconsider, because, as I always say, I don't pick my carpenters built on their house. I built it off their customers. So if their customers' houses look like crap, but their house looks great, I'm probably not going to work with that carpenter.
Sure.
Because if that carpenter's always at their house building their house, they're probably not going to want to work on mine.
Right.
I'd rather work with a carpenter that has a crappy house.
Yep.
So it's one of those where you're putting your time and effort into it. So be mindful of the trainers.
That makes sense. Make
sure they're willing to stand by their work.
Yep.
And make sure they're willing to give you your money back at those points all the way through it. Also be respectful. If the trainer did put all their work into it, all their time and effort into it, because again, don't degrade the trainer to try to rip them off type of thing. Be respectful. But like in this case, I'm a man of my word. I'm going to back it. I want you to feel comfortable here, because this is not just it's not just an animal. This is a family member that you're putting here and you're entrusting with us.
Sure.
We do a few different things. So one, that we ask that you bring pre-made meals.
Yep.
And we actually ask you to add additional food to those pre-made meals, because your dog will lose weight while they're here. They're going to be doing extra work. They're going to be doing all those things. But we scale your dog. We watch them. We monitor their health. If they're pooping too much, we'll literally stop everything and send them home. If we see that they're not eating properly, we will stop the training immediately.
Yeah.
And have you come and pick them up. Everything is about them and monitoring them.
Right.
And then we have a private Facebook group that we take pictures and we upload, so you can see your dog's progress and stuff like that.
That's great.
That we create a community with. So once you're a client of ours, you get put into the group. And you can talk to people, ask people questions and thoughts, and check out their dogs and your dogs. So it's a pretty neat thing that way too.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the other things I'm excited about, is being able to, at least to my understanding, in the future, after going through the program, if I am traveling or if my wife and I are gone,
Bring
we
it
can
back
continue
to you. Yep.
right with boarding and training.
Yeah. So once you finish your training program here, if you board here, we automatically refresh training. There's no additional fee. So the same price as the boarding is included. That we refresh the training. It's included. The other thing that comes with the stay and train program, which is something that I'm really happy and proud of, is we give 1 year's worth of pack walks. So you can go to every pack walk to work your dog with us. It's on every first Saturday of the month. So we go out and we do a giant pack walk. So that walking issue that you might be struggling with, you might still struggle with it because you didn't get the one-on-one. So what we do is we put a pack walk. So it means we're guaranteed distractions, we're guaranteed dogs, and the trainers are there to work with you, and that's included. There's no additional fee.
Right, that's great.
The other thing we have is called open training, which is at our other facility in Joppa on Route 40 on the second and sorry, I'm getting the dates mixed up, but I believe it's the second Wednesday of every month. You can bring your dog there and work your dog on our obstacle course and around other dogs in different points. So that means everybody gets to work off of something different. Cool. And our trainers are there to work with you, and that's included in your program as well with the stay and train. That's so great. We don't just finish your program and wish you luck. We have things for the following year that you can continue to follow up with and continue to work on. So then that way you're not just left to the wolves afterwards.
Sure. You know? All right, last thing for you, which is, has there been a scenario that you've encountered or do you ever face an experience where you have a dog that comes and they just can't adjust?
Yes. Yeah. And then we literally call you up and say, hey, listen, this is where we are. This is the scenario. We want to, we'll offer you your money back, obviously, right off the bat. Sure. We're going to, hey, listen, your dog's just not going to handle this scenario. And we typically will know by day 3. So by day 3, we're going to know if your dog's going to adjust or not.
Right.
And that's when we're going to make that call. And we're going to say, hey, listen, your dog's it's just not working. We don't feel it's in the best health and interest of your animal. We're not going to force this down their throat. Come get your dog. We'll give you the options. We can either A, give you a full refund, B, switch to our platinum program, right, which is the one where it's the 1 day a week for 7 weeks.
Sure.
Or C, you can work, and this is the big one that comes out a lot, is you can work with me on one-on-one lessons or available trainers at that point in time. Because we want to give you the best options, but it's not for everybody, and we understand that. Right. So we do have the options afterwards, but it's always a case-by-case basis. So it's not like your dog doesn't adjust to 3, now all of a sudden you work with mine.
Well, right, and that's I was going to say, there's recommendations.
Yeah, like if we're not the right fit too, we'll even help research the best trainer to fit the need on hand. Like we have a client that was that has service dog training needs. We don't do that style of training. We don't have that here. She came to us for the baseline obedience. She comes to us for the country club where we exercise and do play groups with the dog. But when it came to service dog training, we don't do that. It's not our specialty. So we researched. We found a good service dog trainer that, and we made our recommendation for her to follow through with that trainer. We have no shame in our game. It's about you and your dog. Again, if I don't do it, then why am I? I'm not going to force this peg that doesn't fit into the hole. Right. You don't do that. Because the better thing is, I always say, is that I might not be the right one, but I might know that one. Right. And if I'm not the right one and I'm honest with you, you might find the right client for me, and by not ever ripping you off, you'll take care of me in the long term.
Absolutely.
I always look at things in the, one of the Zig Ziglar says it best. The chief cause of failure is trading what you want most for what you want now. And I will never trade the longevity of my career for a few dollars today. It's just ain't worth it.
Yeah.
So this is the hour mark.
Cool.
If you want to continue talking, I do have to stop this and record. If not, let me sign off and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Go for it.
All right.
Yeah.
Everybody, this was a fantastic episode. I actually feel really, really good about it. I love being interviewed about this stuff. I think it's a lot of fun. So if you're interested in coming on the show, interview me, talking to me, and just learning different things by picking my brain, because it helps not only you, it helps me get the information that's stuck in this thing out to everybody that's seeking it. So if you're interested, please feel free to shoot me an email at michael@blueline-k-9.com. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and seeing what you want to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Give us a like, love, subscribe, a thumbs up on YouTube, and get on our emailing list. That way that you'll never miss an episode as they get emailed directly to you with special offers and discounts that you can be utilizing in your with your pet all year round, and maybe other things. We have events coming up that we can't wait to see, so make sure you're on that email list so you can come to our our dog days of summer, our open nights, maybe a movie night. I was really thinking about putting a movie night here at Joppa. I was thinking about literally getting an inflatable thing and having people bring their dogs and maybe, I don't know, watching a movie. It'd be pretty cool. Yeah. So that's a sign off here. We'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.